Okay. So, is it okay? Yeah, should be okay. Let me make sure that I got. Oh yes. You're still a marine biologist, right?
I hope so.
Oh, okay, this one. Okay, this one. This one has to go. No. This one has to go. No, I think I'll tell the audience that you have a great passion for ecology
The environment.
and environment. Yes, and you still serve the Singapore Science. No, sorry, the Singapore Science Center is already passed.
Passed.
Yes, that's right.
I'm president and fellow of the Singapore National Academy of Science.
Okay. Yes, the president of the National Academy of Science, and okay, and you are the immediate past president for Federation of Asian
Yes.
Scientific
past tense.
Academic and Societies. Is that correct?
Academic societies,
Yes.
scientific academies and societies.
Academies and societies. Okay. Good. All right. So I'll shorten that. So so um, so can I address you as Professor Tan Wee Leo or Professor Leo Tan Wee Hin?
My full name is Leo Tan Wee Hin. My family name is Tan. But when you address me, you can call me Leo or Professor Tan.
Yeah. For the first part, as a formality, is Professor Leo Tan Wee Lin.
Hin.
Okay. Hin.
Hin.
Sorry, correct. Hin. Just like and then after that, I can
You can address me as Leo.
Professor Leo. Oh. So we'll just look at the camera for a few seconds, and I'll just once I count to 3, I'll begin. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Hi, welcome to the National Critics' Choice Online News. I'm Robin Stienberg. Welcome to our show again. And today we have a very interesting guest who's going to tell us more about the environment, conservation, as well as what's happening to Singapore that is going towards the green society. Plans for becoming a green society in Singapore is well on the way, in fact, here in Singapore and most part, hopefully, Southeast Asia. Today we have Professor Leo Tan Wee Hin, who is actually the president for National Academy of Science in Singapore, and he was also the immediate past president of Federation of Asian Scientific Academies and Societies, and he's also the founding member for Science Council of Asia. And Professor Leo has won numerous awards in his field. And today we're going to find out more about his passion and also fossils, dinosaurs, and also going green. Professor Leo, welcome to our show here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, the National Critics' Choice. You have a great distinguished career, and also as well as your passion for going green, to promote green here in Singapore and Southeast Asia, and even perhaps to the world. One of the key issues today, many are asking is, how is Singapore doing right now? And also, secondly, your initiative for the Marina Bay itself, the garden itself, is one of the most spectacular, I think, events that ever been created. And what do you see the changes and the perception of the people here in Singapore about preservation and going green?
Thank you, Robin. I think you realize that Singapore got its independence in a very traumatic way. In 1965, we were left to fend for ourselves as an independent sovereign nation. And we have no natural resources except people. And of course, in the initial years, survival and growth were the imperatives. And we paid less attention to protecting the greenery because it was all about ensuring survival. But over the years, the government has realized that in order to grow, you just don't develop at any expense. You have to ensure that the environment and the economy are both, which are both interdependent, are sustainable. And that's how we developed our sustainable development programs. However, step back to 1965, we cut back on our green space on the understanding that it was important to build houses, hospitals, schools, and infrastructure, factories, in order to ensure economic survival. And that was a price to pay. This was a time when, as a young student, I was an activist for the green movement. And it wasn't very well received because you were seen as going against the grain. But over time, it's become accepted that it's inevitable that the environment and economic growth are intertwined. But it's been a long journey and it's been a fruitful journey. For example, I watched the demise of a lot of our green spaces. I'm a marine biologist. From young, I always aspired to be one. And I watched, one by one, our beaches disappearing in the name of progress, where we built infrastructure, man-made infrastructure. Yes, that was essential. I understood until almost every beach was reclaimed. Then I decided that I would take a stand on one of them. You cannot fight every battle, but we are realistic, pragmatic Singaporeans. And I said, Labrador was a beach I grew up on. Why is Labrador important? First of all, there's memory. I grew up there. I played on the beaches there. And I watched 2/3 of it disappearing into a park, a man-made park. And only 300 meters of it was left. What was unique about Labrador? It was rocky, it was ugly, but it was home to almost every group of marine animal in that small 300-meter space. And more importantly, Singapore is known as a tropical island. And we had the only coral reef on the main island at Labrador. So I saw the potential for well, at that time we didn't call it ecotourism, but there was something. Heritage, understanding, and heritage and history, understanding why did Singapore develop the way it did? What was it like when Raffles first landed, when our early ancestors landed? How would our young know how far Singapore has come, has grown, if they do not know where they came from? And that was important. Thirdly, I was a university lecturer by the time I started my campaigns to try to protect Labrador. It was my teaching, living laboratory for my undergraduates and my postgraduate students. And we found even a new species of marine animals. In what seemingly is an overbuilt, busy port, we still could find diversity of life and form, and new ones at that. And fifthly, the researchers could work on Southeast Asian marine biodiversity right here on the tiny island. So there were many reasons, plus public education. There were many reasons why we felt that little stretch. And I fought for 30 years with the help of the community to preserve it. And the Port of Singapore Authority then, which owned that piece of flat, said, you know, if we were to build a port, we would make 50 million or more a year. Why are you just keeping it for animals which have no use to us? My counter-argument was, because of the ecosystem there is a balance in nature, and that's why there's fish in the sea. For example, if you break a food chain by killing a group of animals which are critical to the fish, the plankton or the crustacea, the floating crustacea, then the fish will die. And the fish dies, as I said, 80% of human beings living on the coast depend on fish for their protein. We are going to be affected. So it's a selfish reason for protecting the environment. And of course, other things came along. And over the years, enlightenment became the order of the day. And people began to see that by keeping greenery, you're actually enhancing the quality of the environment, the health of the nation, the people and the nation, and hence, even your workers have better productivity and time for recreation and recharging so that they become better workers and better parents and community.
That's a very good insight and outlook. But has the government ever thought that it could be a waste of resources? And on top of that, has the government felt that they could easily just import, fish and or any other food resources and do without the beaches?
Yes.
You know.
I think initially that might have been the thinking because we really had no resource, and therefore very few. If you have got hardly any resource, why are you trying to keep these green spaces which seemingly are unproductive to the nation? We can just, as you said, import. We import all our rice anyway, our staple food. We buy 75% of the fish from our neighbors. We catch 25% in our waters, which is not enough. We used to grow a lot of vegetables. We were self-sustaining in pigs, poultry, and eggs. But we decided that these could be subbed out to neighboring countries and even importing from other places. But the enlightenment and the vision of our government was that in order for a nation to be sustainable, while initially we had to do that, in time we had to think about long term. And long term means educating your people to appreciate that if we can import everything, what would you think would happen in the end? Our people will take for granted that, oh, I can buy from this place, I can buy from that place. But what happens if there is, as climate change may be a real thing, some people don't believe it is, the other countries may not be able to sell to you. Where is your food security? Where are you going to get your resources from? Even if you have all the money in the world. For example, if you're in Saudi Arabia or the Middle East, there's plenty oil there, but there's very little water. And if there's no water, there's no life. You can have all the oil and all the wealth, but there's no human life. So this is always the trade-off. What is important? How do we ensure? And this is why today we are much more comfortable about our water needs, unlike the early days where we depended on rainfall and the tap from our northern neighbor. But today, with new water and new technology, we're able to desalinate very effectively and cheaply too.
And speaking about affordable resources, let's go back to the long-term effects, on the mindsets of the people. About the youth, I know that you've spoken at one conference about the youth of today and tomorrow, and the kind of challenges that policymakers are facing, including yourself as well, on how these young people are wanting to make a change, but they don't seem to find the opportunity. So I'd like to pose this question to you right now regarding about as Singapore and Southeast Asia, or even Asia, is moving towards adopting more green initiatives, conservations and preservation as well. Do the youth today recognize the urgency, and do they actually going to embrace it? And how would policymakers and the community able to engage the youth on the short, long term, and perhaps even the midterm, to encourage them to be part of the program?
This is where education comes in. Environmental education as part of total holistic education. It's not only passing your 3 R's in school, but in life, it's about having a livable environment. And to do that, you must teach them from young that appreciating that the tiger, that the wild boar, whatever, has its place in the environment. When they become too many in nature, there's always a predator and a prey to balance it out. But we have become the dominant animals of the kingdom of earth, that we are able to change the environment, and sometimes we change the balance also. While we had a lot of greenery, everybody could take it for granted, so they didn't mind losing it. But when they reach a certain stage, even city folk, they begin to wonder, why am I looking at all of concrete? And this is basically what human beings need. They are one with nature because they are biological. And when they lose it, then they begin to feel a sense. But you got to teach them. In the past, we never needed to teach people anyway. When I grew up, the snakes came into the house. You know which was dangerous, which to leave alone, which to chase out, which to kill. But today, a bee flies into the house. Everybody goes into a panic. Who do we call? The police, the national parks, or the pest dominator. In the past, a bee was, you just live with it. But this is where education comes in. And it's not just Singapore. It's all the cities of Asia where the children are being isolated as more and more forests are chopped. When you isolate people from nature, there is an innate desire to try to find something. They do not know what. And that's where environmental education. Expose them when young. Have projects. Bring them into parks just to wander around because they're breathing in healthy oxygen, looking at leaves. Why is it leaves have so many patterns? Curiosity about nature. And that leads them to appreciate ultimately why one animal and one plant is important to me. Why I cannot chop down trees, because a growing tree absorbs carbon dioxide. And this is one of the causes of climate change, global warming, is that there's too much carbon dioxide. We want to maintain it at 350 parts per million. It's already 370, 380 million parts per million. How do we bring it back to that level where the world will be more sustainable? And this is the challenge to our young people. What can you think of ways in which we can do? So they can't change the world because they always look at government, they always look at corporations. If you depend on that, it will take a long time. And besides, adults have harder time trying to convince each other. Whereas when you are young, what can you do at your local level? And this, whether you come from the rural or you come from in fact, the rural children are easier to convince than the city children. But the urban children can be convinced. And you say, okay, you tell me that the adults are spoiling the environment by having too many factories, chimneys spewing carbon dioxide, too many cars. But I said, you can ameliorate that. All of us, if you are city children, you go to work or school via public transport, cars, buses, whatever it is. They spew carbon dioxide. When you take a holiday with your parents to Disneyland in Orlando, think of how many thousand tons of carbon that you have contributed. You can't do anything about that, right? But how about ameliorating, in other words, paying for your sins? How about planting a tree? In exchange, you can calculate how much carbon dioxide you have individually left a footprint for. And plant a tree, because we know a growing tree, how much each species can absorb as it grows. And that is a form of balancing your carbon footprint with a balance in nature. And these are little things you can teach them from young. But if they don't want to do that, they can do projects about recycling, how not to waste, how to compost food, so that they can be fertilizer for the plants that they grow on the balcony, since they are all city kids, they don't have big gardens. There are so many ingenious and creative ways that children, they can do art out of recycled material. And they learn about, for example, water. That water from the tap in most cities are very safe to drink. Singapore, we guarantee that it's safe to drink. Why is it you have to pay 70 cents to 150 for a small bottle of water? Which, first of all, you have to use petroleum, energy, which produces carbon dioxide to produce that PET bottle. Secondly, what do you do with those bottles? You throw them away. and they become flotsam and jetsam, or they may end up in a stomach of a marine animal and kill it. So these are repercussions. But what if you can collect all these bottles back? First of all, don't drink bottled water if you can help it. You can't help it, then can you recycle these PET bottles into chairs, into carpets, into alternative things which are recyclable, and therefore you keep the resource going, and therefore you minimize mining into the ground or burning things in order to produce more carbon dioxide. So there are many things that, and we do that. Our young children are, in fact, I'm very impressed with young people. They have more ideas, they have more passion, they have more active ideas that they want to try, but the adults sometimes stop them from doing it, or those that are encouraged, they show. For example, one 18-year-old girl from Singapore, an Indian girl, a very effacing girl when she was 14 years old. She doesn't look at you when she's talking to you. She blossomed into one of the most spectacular environmentalists. At 18 years old, she was elected to the UNEP, Nairobi Young Environmental Council as chairperson. And today, she's a medical doctor in the UK. She was one of the youngest MRCP and FRCS in England. 26 years old, she got her major license to practice surgery. But she's a very strong environmentalist. And it all started with empowerment. From nothing. What can youth do? Everything, because they have the energy, they have the ideas, but they need the support from the community to let them test out their ideas. We always assume there is only adult. When you reach a certain level that you can make decisions, that you can act decisively and you can implement. But collectively, we found that the young people are becoming the champions of the environment. They have become aware, and now we want them to be activists. But in a reasonable way, not iconoclastic ways of destroying things in order to prove their point, or being too radical about things, but in a rational way.
And speaking about being very rational, about your passion, being a champion for preservation, and even for and conservation as well. Who actually inspired you? What was the turning point of your inspiration to become a champion that you are today?
I think when young, there was no television, but we went to the cinema and I watched Jacques Cousteau, the inventor of the aqualung, the Hans and Lotte Haas, to a husband and wife Dutch team. That I was fascinated how they swam with whales, and they didn't have any fear, and they were one with nature. It fascinated me, and that was the starting point. But along the way, I had good university lecturers in the University of Singapore. They were mostly Caucasians, who continued to enthuse me about, don't worry about your textbooks. Animals don't read textbooks. When observe for yourself. And I did. And I found that I still have my fear of snakes, but I've discovered that snakes are more fearful of us than us of them, because I was swimming in the Raffles Lighthouse, south of Singapore, and a sea snake, there's no way you can survive a sea snake bite if you're out in the open. It takes too long to get back to shore for your antidote. And he was swimming towards me, or it was swimming towards me, I was swimming towards it. We both saw each other. The textbook will say, that's dangerous. Avoid it. So my first reaction was to avoid it. But the snake did the same thing simultaneously as I was approaching it. It approached me. We both turned at the same time. And that was the first time I said, the animal is just as frightened of me. In other words, we are both thinking of our survival. And why is it we always think that wild animals always attack? Yes, they will attack in certain circumstances, but not in all circumstances. And the textbook was wrong. And that's what my professors taught. Don't believe the textbook, we'll find out. And that's how I became a field biologist. And that's the most exciting way to find out about life, is to do whatever cause, not just environment. You want to be a good doctor, you got to practice your trade, and so forth. So that's how it just went on from step to step. It took me 40 years to win a whole crusade of people who said Labrador shall be saved and upgraded from a park into a nature reserve. In 2001, it took us almost 40 years from 1965 to get our first nature reserve.
So
nature reserve.
So if I'm right to say, you, and if you would agree with me, that the young people should not just be blinded by textbook procedures, but they should actually go out and discover.
Yes. No, the textbooks generally have been tested over time of certain behaviors of animals. But animals cannot talk. You have to observe them. And so it is the writer who is interpreting what he is or she is seeing about the animal. And that's why I always believe in taking it with a pinch of salt. I'm not denigrating any textbook, but don't take it as gospel truth. Unfortunately, we love to sit for examinations, and by regurgitating from an authoritative text, you can't fail your exam, right? But in real life, there's no such thing as sitting for an exam. It's a real test out there whether you or the wild creature is going to come to an understanding, or one of you are going to disappear from the face of the earth.
The same way with nature as well.
Same way with nature as well. Yes.
Now, about the Gardens by the Bay, you were.
I was fortunate to be the chairman
yes,
at that time who was supporting the National Parks Board to develop a second botanic gardens.
How does it feel like?
It's a wonderful feeling because it's not only iconic because it's grand, but because we have been able to bring nature to the city folk who never would have seen the world's Mediterranean type of tree of vegetation, or the tropical montane vegetation in one place. And plus that, we develop different kinds of gardens to show people what is possible about and the importance of why plants are in fact more important than animals, in the sense that they are the fundamental. Without plants, there is no animal life. But both are complementary because animals have to propagate the plants, so they are symbiotic with each other, and therefore they fit into the scheme of things.
Now, because Michael Bloomberg did mention about the Gardens by the Bay in Singapore, and that was created by yourself with your team, and he said that it is going to be like the next well-known park in New York.
It will be.
And it's very iconic.
Our chief protagonist actually for this project is a horticulturist, Dr. Tan Wee Hin, who is now the CEO of the Gardens by the Bay. He is the expert. I'm a marine biologist. He is the plant man. So I don't claim that I knew what to do with it. I just supported because this idea was so, right to do for Singapore.
Mm-hmm. And what is the so right element? What was the main cause behind it?
Okay, we want people to really, our own Singaporeans, to appreciate and stay in what they call their home. To be called home, Singapore, there must be something to hold people to. There must be something iconic that you feel very proud of, that you can raise your children in a safe environment. You can run around in 100 hectares of valuable reclaimed land in Singapore.
So that's 100 hectares?
1 hectare. At the moment it's 50 hectares.
Oh,
we're developing another 50 hectares.
Oh, really?
Yes. This is phase 1 of the...
Oh, it's only phase 1?
It's only Garden South.
Oh, wow.
We're already developing Garden East also at the moment.
Where is that?
Just across the Marina Bay, the
wow.
barrage.
Oh, wow.
That one
amazing.
is left more or less natural.
Wow. So you're going to have real animals roaming around?
We don't know. Nature will come. We got dragonflies there now. We got, but I don't think we'll have wild boar there. They'll root up all the nice vegetation. But the key is, it's not about just that. Why would I want to come to Singapore, raise my family? I work very hard. At the end of the day, I need to recharge. I need recreational space. And as I said the other day, why we think we have an advantage over Central Park. We know that Central Park is really the iconic whole of the center.
Yeah, but that's only for New York. Yes.
Just for New York, for New York. But we are a city-state, so we equate ourselves to New York. But we say we have one advantage over New York. We've got the view of the sea as well as the garden.
That's right.
So you got the kiasu attitude, 2 for 1. You get an extra bonus. And the key is, if I feel comfortable, my family are safe to roam around and breathe fresh air, enjoy the vegetation, I would want to work and stay here because I have a life, I have a balanced life. And that's the importance of these things.
I think I would say it's 3 in 1 because you have a natural garden, you have what's that you call it?
The botanic gardens.
The botanic gardens.
Yes.
You have the sea view.
The sea view.
And the third element is safety. You know, it's safe.
That is really the factor.
I wouldn't bring my friends to New York to the city park there because it's not safe at night. You know.
Yes, I wouldn't go to Central Park at night. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
But the gardens by the bay is very safe. At night, you will see people walking
That's
around
right.
Past midnight. And there's a sky bar there for people at 2 a.m. They're still up there.
Amazing. Now, your passion has driven you so far, in terms of conservation and preservation. And let's talk about your latest project, and that is the museum. Right behind me is the fossil of the dinosaur. And I really wonder, what's going to be the expectation that Singaporeans and as well as tourists and your neighbors around the region can benefit. What can they learn from this latest new museum that is going to be created?
This again, I go back to if you do not know where you have come from, you cannot know how to plan where you are going. This is the real concept, fundamental to human beings. Because my children, they were born into post-independent Singapore, 1980s. They didn't know what hardship was, because everything was at a certain level of maturity and development. But it's when they see and they can compare what life was like, they have a better appreciation of why we are what we are today. And this, first of all, is heritage. We always talk about cultural heritage as part of human need and human society. But the animals were here long before human beings came along. They are also part of our heritage. And they roam the lands and they own these lands long before we did. We encroached. Shouldn't we learn a little bit more about them? So that's our heritage. And history. But more importantly, their well-being actually is our well-being. As I said, we are very selfish human beings. If they die out, we are going to die out. And that's why the dinosaur is so iconic as a symbol, an example. Many of my critics always say, Leo, why do you want to bring dinosaurs to this museum? It's a museum of Southeast Asia. We never had dinosaurs.